Hi guys, Jason and Nick here from the Art Farm.
Hey everybody!
Welcome back. This is the, hope you enjoyed the first episode. This is the second episode of Around the Fire. We brought it inside tonight guys because we've got heavy rains outside, potentially flood conditions like we've had back in January and 98-degree winds. So we come inside, we're on the trial property inside the house, so we're not doing it at the Art Farm. So we're lucky we got several locations we can do around the fire. So without further ado guys, we'll hope you enjoyed the first one and we'll crack on with some more questions. Before we go any further though, I've got to add to one of the questions from last week. Uperman sent in the question regarding, he's heard that you can put, to get extra seed out there, to put the seed in with your feed to help germinate in the paddocks and it passes through the dun. So there's a bit of that question I forgot to answer last week, or additional question, which is, I think it's pretty detrimental to the question. So I better bring it out now because I hate people to do this and then have it fail on them and then it comes back on me. So what it was guys is, when he mentioned the word feed, I don't feed my cows grain. I've got a smaller framed animal. I'm trying to keep them below 1,000 pounds because the bigger animals need grass and obviously they need grain. So I'm not sure if Uperman meant a mineral feeder or feed, but I don't feed. But I know you can do the same thing in mineral feeders, like and put the seed, pastoral feed, seed in with the mineral feeder. So, you know, it works well with your legumes. And I mentioned the hard seeds last week. The bit I missed out was, if you got salt in that mineral feeder, definitely don't be adding it in the salt because that salt will destroy any seed you put in there. So that's an important thing I forgot from last week. Okay. So yeah, just remember that guys. You use the most they consume the most of, but don't put it in the salt because the pastoral seed will be destroyed from the salt. And that's, you know, that was on my mind all week, so I just want to get that out there. So we'll go on with Nick now. She can carry on with the first question of the second episode.
Okay. First question. I really hope that I do pronounce your name right. If I do not, I do apologise right now. The first one is from Zevki Dalkalik. And he says, good day. What's the name of the weed plant you are planting? Is it suitable for grazing and does it require irrigation?
I think where Sevely's coming with this question would be the bale grazing video. So I wouldn't actually call it a weed seed because I haven't actually rolled out any bales of hay other than that Rhodes grass, and I haven't seeded any pastures in the video, so I'm sure Sevely's referring to the bale grazing video. So that bale I rolled out was Rhodes grass. So it's not a weed, it is definitely good fodder and it makes great hay. Because that area up there was very bare, the reason I used Rhodes grass on that this time, because I know it's a fast growing pastoral plant. So I use that up there because I know it grows fast and you get plentiful seeds off the head, so I'll particularly let that plant come to head. So when the cows come in, they trample the ground down. They ate some of the grass, but because I let it come to seed, all that seed went back down. So that would regerminate and thicken up the area. And so it's definitely not a weed plant. It's called rhodgrass, and it's actually native to Africa. So it was obviously imported over and brought to Australia because originally it was native to Africa. So it makes great hay fodder, but the only issue I've got with it is if you're using it in pasture like we've got here, we don't plan to produce hay. It is that fast growing, it'll outgrow any other plant I've got in the pasture. And what happens then, because it goes through that diaper stage, teenage stage, and gets in that nursing home stage faster than any other plant, you know, the rest of the plants in that teenage stage, it'll throw a seed head and come to seed. And as you see from a couple of videos, it's forced me to go back with the cows and predominantly graze those seed heads off when the other plants aren't ready to graze. So that's the only issue. I put it up there because I knew it was fast growing, but I would put it in bare areas, but I wouldn't go roll it out with when you've already got grasses in your paddock. I would select a different fodder that didn't come to seed as fast. So what I'm doing with that area up there is I'm going to roll different fodder of a different nature up that area to counteract the amount of Rhodes grass up there. So I get that diversity. At the moment, predominantly 80-90% Rhodes grass. And as for the second part of that question, does it need irrigating? No, it's like most plants, you don't need to irrigate. As long as you're keeping, with regenerative farming, you want to keep it long enough so when you bring your cows through, you're armouring the soil, breaking that sap cycle, so that armour then builds on the soil. So whatever rain you do get, you're capturing in the ground and not run off into your neighbour's property. Over time, you build up, that armour will then break down in topsoil. The more topsoil over years, at the moment I've got, I reckon, 15 mil of topsoil in 2 years. I've got probably an inch of armour, and I reckon I've got myself probably 10, 15 mil of topsoil. Over time you get more and more, so it'll hold your storage bank for water, will get more. Predominantly the years go on when you're breaking down more armour and getting more soft soil, so it doesn't need watering. But if you're a farmer with an irrigation licence, why wouldn't you use the irrigation licence?
Yeah.
You know, you're paying for the irrigation licence. Why wouldn't you irrigate? What irrigation does, if you're going to water your pasture, guys, you're not relying on the rain to a certain degree. You know, it speeds up the process of getting where you want to go regeneratively if you can irrigate, because in a drought, you're bringing that grass back faster, longer, trumping more grass, but predominantly what you want to do is trying to get away from irrigation down the track. So, you know, 10 years, 5 years of irrigation, you're going to have enough armour on the ground, you're going to have enough soil converted, you know, the armour breaks down into topsoil, you'll have enough soil on the ground to hold the water, you won't need to irrigate. So, and when you get thatched armour, 1 inch, 2 inches thick, and you can remember you're keeping 2/3 of the plant on the ground, you won't need to water because that water will stay there for months on end until your rain comes back. So, I'll just confirm with Nick, have I answered all that question?
I think
it was the weed seed I answered, I copied that one. And the irrigation, that was the only two things. So we'll have to go on to that next question, I think.
Okay. So the next one is from Chris. Chris Florentino. And he has said, it looks like a lovely day. I miss summer already. Oh, temperatures here are getting pretty hot, I'll tell you what. How long do you reckon it took to fill the container?
Spoke to Chris a few times on the phone. Chris is one of my clients who actually bought some timeless fencing. He's one of the first people that jumped on board and got some timeless, so good on you, Chris.
Thank you. That's a good point.
But yeah, I think that Chris is talking about where we're filling up the IBC container for those fruit trees down on the river. How long did it take? That took us an hour, because at the time I only had garden hose as my suction line. And what happened there, Chris, is we had a look when it was sucking the water, the diameter of that pipe reduced by 2/3. It actually sucked it closed, so it was flat like a pancake. So I reckon it'd be only a quarter of the amount of water was getting through, because that pump that I use, it's an Azedo water transfer pump. You know, it's only a cheap pump. It's only $150 from Bunnings, but it's capable of doing 60 litres a minute. So at that rate, like, it was taking us a full hour to fill that IBC container.
I'll tell you what though, I wasn't complaining.
So,
because at least we got to go for a swim, we got to have lunch, we got to sit back and have a quick rest.
Yep.
So I can't complain with that. So
definitely, you know, that IBC container should have not taken an hour, because I didn't have the poly pipe, I only used a normal garden hose. It reduced the flow by 1/3. But that's cheap, you know, like I said, in that setup, for $300 or $400, if you keep the generator out of it, which I use here when the power goes off, you know, it's $300 or $400, but you can get faster, guys. Like, I've also got a Davey fire pump, which is 5.5 horsepower, but the cost goes through the roof. Compare $150 worth of water transfer pump from the Zito to $875 for the Davy Firefighter, and it does 500 litres a minute. Basically, that IBC container could be filled up in 2.5 minutes. I don't like to run my Davy pumps flat out. I reckon you always run them at 3/4. You have them flat out all the time, it's no good for the motor. You're going to burn them out. So I run mine at between 1/2 and 3/4. So potentially, I think we'd fill one up with the firefighter. We had that.
Oh yeah, we did.
When we had those girls in the yard in quarantine, the new stock we brought in.
Yeah.
So it took us 2.5 minutes because I didn't have it flat out. I had it 3/4, so 2.5, 3 minutes I think it took to fill. So there is faster ways, guys. You can, it's faster than that again. You can buy a twin impeller pump if you wanted to, but it's what cost. You've gone from $150 cheap Zito water transfer pump to make it affordable for everyone to an $875 Davy Firefighter that can do it in, 3 minutes, or you can go to a twin impeller, which is higher again. So I only try to make it affordable for everybody. So if you've got a spare hour and you're doing other stuff in the paddock, like generally we're doing other stuff, so an hour's not going to worry us. But so you can do it faster, Chris. But that took us an hour with the suction hose caved in on it. So otherwise it would have taken, I reckon, 35, 40 minutes.
Okay.
So
okay.
I think I've answered that question. And
I think you have, and it was a nice day that day too. Okay, the third one is from Grazing. And he has said, wondering if there is a time and a place for allowing seed to set and drop into the pasture. Maybe earlier in the paddock regeneration journey, or to help kickstart the hay rollout additionally.
I might have to come back and ask Nicole to this. I'm going to answer this in
2 parts.
2 parts. There's too much for me to remember.
Okay.
So the first part I'll answer was, what was that first bit again?
Wondering if there was a time and a place for allowing seed to set and drop into the pasture.
Yeah. I'll answer that first, guys. So you really don't want it to get to that stage where it has seeded and it's at the verge of dropping. I've got areas here on the trial property and just about 3/4 on the other farm where it's continual graze, because we've had a massive dump of rain, the cows can't get through fast enough and graze it off before it seeds. And predominantly we're talking about Rhodes grass here because it's the first thing that seeds before anything else. So I'm talking about Rhodes grass right here, right now. So, and you don't want to let it get to that stage, guys, because the moment they drop that seeds, I've got stuff here the cows won't eat. I've got stuff out there the cows won't eat. So I would say no to that stage. I definitely wouldn't get to that stage, because you'll find there'll be a point where you can't help it but come to seed, because you get a lot of rain and you won't be able to move the girls or the cattle around the paddocks fast enough to get the seed heads chewed off before it actually seeds and drops. So don't wait, because I can guarantee it will happen. It will happen to everybody. Don't wait. Try and go through the process and get that plant chewed off to that 2/3 height, chew that 1/3 off. Try and do that as best you can, because I know there's going to be times that you won't be able to, and you will come to the point where those seed heads will drop into the pasture and they'll germinate. But if you wait for your whole paddock to come to that seed head and then bring the cows through, you're going to find yourself, you're going to be running short of pasture, because they won't touch that plant because it's drained in energy, and they'll be walking around it trying to find the greener grass higher in energy. It's more palatable. They won't touch it. So definitely don't wait. Go through your pasture, because I can tell you there will be a point where it will come to seed.
Okay, so well, the next part of the question is maybe earlier in the paddock regeneration journey?
I wouldn't say earlier in the regeneration process journey. You don't want your plant coming to seed, because if you're going in that track and you haven't got a lot of pastoral grass across your paddock, it's been overgrazed, or you've got limited diversity, you don't want what little grass you have got, you don't want it coming to seed, because once it seeds and you're waiting for it to drop and you think you're going to get thicker pasture, the cows won't touch it, so then they're off eating other stuff and overgrazing. I'd be worried about that, like I said, the answer to that part of the question before, don't even wait for it, because it will happen. I've got areas here that I can't help, especially with the roads grass. It will come to seed at a point when you get a lot of rain and sunshine. You won't keep up. It'll happen naturally without you even trying to force it. So it'll happen.
Yeah.
The main thing is, what you need to be concerned about is trying to get the armour on the ground. So if you haven't got cattle already, or if you have got cattle, rest them in another paddock or feed them hay in another paddock. You want to let that grass get to, at least, a good 300 mil a foot height, because then you can bring the cows back in. The most important thing here, guys, is to armour the soil. You need to armour the soil, because you may have, 5 or 6 different native seed species in that soil already. Because it's either been overgrazed or, from years of overgrazing, compaction, before you were my time, it's been continual grazed. It is dry, there's no armour, that seed bank is not going to propagate. Not going to germinate, because, it hasn't got the right conditions. The main thing is to get that armour toppled down, to build your seed bank up. Then what happens when you do get the rain, the sun won't be pulling it out of the dirt on you, because you've got that litter bank down. But not only that, you've kept 2/3 of the plant. The regenerative way is to keep it in that teenage years. So you don't want to take any more than 2/3, say 60%, because then the growth rate of that plant is reduced. It doesn't grow back as fast if you go below that 60%. So you've got, the sun now has to go through 60% of that plant and the armour you've produced on the ground of dry soil. So now the native seed bank, which potentially you may have there, is going to germinate now, because you've set the conditions for it to germinate. So don't wait, don't think you need to come to seed, drop it off. If your pasture's thin and you see dirt on the ground but you're waiting that to come to seed, don't do it. Try and let it grow what you can, lay down, move the girls on, let it rest. You need to cover that ground so the sun's not drying it out. That's more important than worry about, letting your plants come to seed. And then at a point, if you're not getting the armour laid down and it's too thin, and you can't get any decent pasture to trample down, then look at rolling out hay. Don't let what pasture you have got come to seed, because they won't touch it. Roll out hay at that point, because now you're introducing armour to the soil. Fair enough, it may cost you, but if you have got very thin area, don't let what you have got come to seed. Invest in good fodder and roll it out. Then you're artificially putting that armour on the ground, and you're putting seed bank from that fodder onto the ground. So you're armouring it, you're putting seed in, and the sun can't take it away from that bare soil you've got. So I think I've answered that part. The last part of the question.
The last part of the question is, or to help kickstart with the hay rollout additionally.
Yes. I've just come up with another part for the question before that. So there's one more part I will say. You say earlier on in the regenerative process, on the other farm at the moment, because I'm waiting for my timeless fencing to come over, half my property is under fence and the other half isn't, because I've pulled it down, cleared the fence line from trees and lantana. At that point where I can't graze the cattle in half my property, yes, I let it come to seed. That's the only time I let it come to seed, when I know I can't be grazed with cattle. Because now I can use that, and I think there's a video coming up too. I've done a video on it. So what's that one, guys? The pasture out there was thin, very sporadic. The last 2 years, I do it 3 or 4 times a year. As soon as it comes to seed head, mow it off. That adds that carbon to the ground. Fair enough, it's not as good as the cows going through, because when the cows bite it, the plant sends root exudates down in the ground because it's stressing that it's going to get pulled out. And then microbes quickly gather up the nutrients it needs to recover that plant. You're not getting that with a slasher, it's just cutting it off. It's not stressed, it's not being tugged or pulled, so you don't get the root exudates, but it's still better than nothing. I've got an inch of armour out there due to slashing in 2 years. So you're still adding that armour to the soil. The sun can't take it away from you. Because I've let it come to seed, I've got extra seed. It's thickened up the pasture for me, because that seed now is germinated. And that pasture out there is up to my chest height, and it is thick. It definitely wasn't like that. It was, I'd say, 50% weeds. Because what you've done is, I'm probably going a bit off question. What you've done is you've covered the soil. Mother Nature, all she's trying to do is cover herself. If you've left bare soil, Mother Nature will pop up a weed every time. It's easy for her to pop up a weed than it is to pop up pastoral grass. She'll pop up a weed that's suitable for the nutrients in that soil. Whatever's deficient in, she's not going to throw something up that's going to die. She'll throw something up that will be able to survive in the deficiencies in that soil. So the faster you get that armour down, the faster you can, whether it be slashing, that's the only time let it come to seed, unused area, slash it, let it come to seed, slash it, let it come to seed, until you get it fenced. You will thicken up your pasture. You're adding armour to the soil at the same time. That's the only time I let my pasture come to seed. So I'll go on with that next question, because I could be talking all night.
You were good at that. Or to help kickstart with hay rollout additionally. Grizz, that's
a Grizz. Yes. I don't know where Grizz is at with that last bit of that question. Earlier on, rolling it out and kickstart the regeneration process. If you're thinking about letting your pasture come to seed, it means you must have pasture there to start with. So, unless it's thin pasture, I think that's where Grizz Datsun might be coming from. He might have thin pasture. He wants to let it come to seed.
And then roll
the grass on to help it.
Yeah, like to then, because then you got the seed bank there, then you got the hay and armouring the soil. Yeah, you could do that, but I'd probably let it come to seed before I rolled straight on top of it. Let the cows let the cows come through, eat what grass there is. Don't let them overgraze it. They may potentially eat some of that seeded grass. They may not. But utilise what pasture you have got, because every bit of pasture you can use before you put armour on it is beneficial for your cattle and yourself, because maybe you put a bit of armour on, you will potentially kill some of that grass. So have them go through, but they're adding fertiliser as well. So butt fertiliser, have them go through, eat what pasture they've got there, let them, don't overgraze it, bring it down to, to that 2/3 height. Then roll your hay on top of that and spread your hay out over that area. If you've got pasture there, don't make it thick like I did up at the top of the property, because I had nothing there. I had clay. I wanted thick pasture. If you've got areas of pasture there, just sporadically spread it out. So you're adding that armour to break down, you're adding seeds. So that is you could do that, Grizz. You could, but just make sure you're grazing through that first. Eat the pasture off and then roll your hay out. So I think that would be. I think you've answered them well.
That question. So
I think so too. That was a good question.
Righto, guys. I think we'll might polish it off with that. We've got dinner to eat, and I don't want to hold you guys up too long. So I think we've been on 15-20 minutes. So I don't know why she raises this question, guys. I'm sorry for not going right now, but she mentioned, have I cooked dinner again? Like, I think you're talking to the wrong audience here, darling.
Excuse me, no way.
Let me put this question to you guys. How many times have you seen me cook dinner? How many times have you seen Nicole cook dinner? Well, let's see. Damper,
come on, that's
lamb shanks, loaded spuds. I'd say no more, guys. I'm just going to finish off with that. Like, I know I've won this argument. She's clearly talking to the wrong audience here. You guys have seen me cook.
Well, maybe next time it might be my turn to do a camp oven.
Well, maybe. I think it will be. So, righto, guys. Won't hold you any longer. Thanks for hanging around if you're still here. One thing I want to say, Sin and Lorraine, I hope your property has settled. I know it was, you get the keys on the 8th of February to your 112 acres in New South Wales. I'm not going to say the place because I don't want everyone to know where you live, but I hope everything's going well, guys. So you've been there a week or two. Sin and Lorraine, we spoke to them on the phone about a month ago now.
Yeah, probably.
Lovely couple. So they are big followers of us on YouTube, and they also really back the Facebook page. So thank you guys for that, and I hope everything's going well.
Yeah, we've been thinking of you.
Anytime you want to ask questions, mate, you know where we are. Flick us an email, or we can organise to have another phone chat. So always happy to talk to people that want to learn. Yeah. So on that note, have a great evening, have a great morning, and a terrific afternoon. I don't know, a bit backwards, but anyway,
you are backwards.
We'll see you later.